building your skills to be self-enterprising, to consistently create opportunity, new opportunity, to consistently take advantage of the opportunity that you've created, to be aware, to face life with your eyes and ears open to the possibilities that may be just around the corner. An enterprising person is one who comes across a pile of scrap metal and sees the making of a wonderful sculpture. An enterprising person is one who drives through an old, decrepit part of town and sees a new housing development. An enterprising person is one who sees opportunity in all areas of life. To be enterprising is to keep your eyes open and your mind active. It's to be skilled enough and confident enough and creative enough and disciplined enough to seize opportunities that present themselves. An enterprising mortgage banker will develop creative financing strategies during slow markets. An enterprising lawyer will study new laws and market herself to people who may need help in those areas. An enterprising salesman will research beyond the obvious to find new prospects for his products or services. An enterprising attitude says, find out before action is taken. Do your homework. Do the research. Be prepared. Be resourceful. Do all you can in preparation of what's to come. Think of a few people you know who are enterprising. Think of people in the news, in your office, in your neighborhood. What do these people have in common? Well, they're probably always on the go, developing a plan, following a plan, reworking the plan until it fits. They're probably very resourceful, never letting anything get in their way. They probably don't understand the word no when it applies to their visions of the future. And when posed with a problem, they'll probably say, let's figure out a way to make it work, instead of, it won't work. You need to keep going and going and going. Self-enterprising people always see the future in the present. Self-enterprising people will always find a way to take advantage of a situation, not be burdened by it. And self-enterprising people aren't lazy. They don't wait for opportunities to come to them. They go after the opportunities. Self-enterprise means always finding a way to keep yourself actively working toward your ambition. Self-enterprise requires two things. Number one, creativity. Creativity to see what's out there and shape it to your advantage. Creativity to look at the world a little differently. Creativity to take a different approach. Creativity to be different. And what goes hand in hand with the creativity of self-enterprise is number two, the courage to be creative. The courage to see things differently and the courage to go against the crowd. The courage to take a different approach. The courage to stand alone if you have to. The courage to choose activity over ease. And activity generally relates to how you feel about yourself. Understanding your self-worth, how valuable you are. What could you do if you had all the skills, took the classes, read the books, burned the midnight oil? What could you do? What true value could you develop? This is one of the better exercises. What could I become? What could I really do in the marketplace? In enterprise, home, family, experience, love, friendship, marriage. How valuable could I become? Am I valuable enough to work on what's not working so I can reach my full capacity? If I'm operating at 20%, what could I possibly do with the other 80%? Once you start understanding how valuable you are, it's a whole new experience. Understanding self-worth. It plays a major role in our ability to be self-enterprising. Our self-worth makes the difference between being lazy and being active. If we don't feel good about ourselves, we won't feel good about our lives. And if we don't feel good about our lives, we won't be very interested in looking for opportunities. So you see, being self-enterprising doesn't just relate to the ability to make money. Being self-enterprising also means feeling good enough about yourself, having a great enough self-worth to want to seek advantages and opportunities that will make a difference in the future. Enterprise is always better than ease. Every time we choose to do less than we possibly can, it affects our self-confidence, our self-worth. If we keep doing a little less every day, a little less, we are also being a little less. Can you imagine what you'd end up being after 10 years of doing a little less every day? It's devastating. Think about it. Doing less could ruin your life. Now, you can reverse the process of doing a little less. You alter the course by doing a little more each day. A little more, a little more, a little more. And pretty soon, you'll develop a new habit of doing rather than neglecting. And days and weeks and months of doing a little more will ultimately do what? It'll increase your confidence and your courage and your creativity and your self-worth. In the end, it's how we feel about ourselves that provides us with the increased courage and creativity for self-enterprise. It's how we feel about ourselves that provides the greatest reward from activity and enterprise. It's not what we get or what we accumulate that makes us valuable. It's what we become that makes us valuable. Success isn't in the having. Success is in the doing. It's the process of doing that brings value. It's the activity that transforms our dreams into reality, that converts ideas into actuality. Self-enterprise is found in the activity, for without activity we'll miss the opportunity. Let me tell you what I think most messes with the mind. I think that simply doing less than you can messes with the mind. It causes all kinds of psychic damage. I think being less than you can be, trying less than you could try, doing it with less enthusiasm than you could do it, messes with the mind. It somehow damages the mind. It damages our self-image. Because here's what I've discovered happens. The minute you turn this around and start extending yourself, you'll see immediate rewards. Maybe not monetary ones, not yet, but it's how you feel about yourself that's the greatest value. You see, it's not what we get that makes us valuable, it's what we become. Remember, creativity is the first requirement for self-enterprise. Here are some creative techniques that'll help keep you on the right track toward that promising future. Number one, think on paper. You can't take a trip to somewhere new without a roadmap. You can't build a house with the plans in your head. You can't build a company with the business plan in your head. You can't seek venture capital with the financials in your head. But here's what you can do. Put it all on paper. Your roadmap, your blueprints, your business plan, your financial projections. When you put it on paper, you can analyze your path, solve your problems, and isolate what works and what doesn't. You can use this for your life as well. If you're faced with a mental roadblock, put it all down on paper. When you put a problem on paper, you take the emotion out of it. With the emotion gone, you can look at the roadblock objectively. You can figure out what you did right, and you can figure out what you did wrong. You can figure out how to change it. So if you've got a problem, pull it out of your head and put it down on paper. Then ask yourself, what can I do? And if that doesn't work, ask yourself, what can I read? And if after researching all you can, you still can't come up with the answer, ask yourself, who can I find to help me? I promise you, if you try these ideas and ask these questions, when you've got a problem, you'll be able to solve about anything that gets in your way. The second step to keeping yourself on the right track and being self-enterprising is to develop the ability to brainstorm. Develop the ability to brainstorm. We hear this term all the time, but what is brainstorming? Just what it sounds like, letting your brain go. Being free from all the inhibitions and objections and negatives. Just putting an idea into your brain and letting it take off, free associating. Not planning a train of thought, but thinking freely. Now, if you're planning a creative strategy session with your associates, a brainstorming session, let me give you a little hint. Effective brainstorming can only happen if you're free from your ego. You can't be worried about saying something stupid or silly or something totally off the wall, because your silly thought may trigger someone else's brain to take it one step further. Brainstorming in a group is an experience of collective thought, an experience of developing one idea or several ideas through a variety of thought processes. Here's another hint on brainstorming. It can't be effective unless everyone involved is comfortable with each other. If you don't feel comfortable within the group, you may withhold the very thought that provides the solution to the problem. You may withhold it because you don't want to appear stupid. How do you think all the advertisements you see on TV and in the magazines get created? How do you think some of those crazy campaigns are born? The process happens through hours and hours of creative brainstorming and working papers. Every member of the team jots down notes, and one idea builds on another idea, and another, and pretty soon, a campaign is born out of the collective thoughts of the group. Now, I don't believe that the best decisions are made by committee, but great ideas are often created by committee. That's number 2 to keeping on the track of self-enterprise. Finding answers through brainstorming, whether you're letting your brain go by itself or whether you're part of a group. Brainstorming can often lead you to solutions. Solutions you'd never have thought of if you'd imposed parameters on your thought process. Here's number 3 for creatively keeping on the track of self-enterprise. And it's really an extension of number 2. Number 3 says, imagine outlandish solutions. Get your brain out of the ruts by considering ideas without considering their practicality. Consider ideas without considering how practical they are. You see, if you allow yourself to think without confinement, you may come across a solution that seems totally inappropriate. But guess what else this type of thinking will do? It'll allow you to open up the process, which will eventually lead to totally appropriate solutions. The 4th creative technique for keeping yourself on the right track to self-enterprise is through flowcharts and doodles and formulas. That's right, doodling. The thing you got in trouble for in grade school is actually quite stimulating to the brain, because the way you think while doodling is quite different than the way you think while creating a flowchart or writing a formula. Your doodles may end up looking like some symbol that will trigger your brain to think of an alternative solution. Drawing creative doodles wakes up a different part of your brain. Try creating a flowchart showing the path to success. What does it look like? Is it a straight course? Is it a varied course? Does it have a lot of curves and corners and different angles? Try creating a flowchart to success. It doesn't matter if it ends up being accurate or not. What matters is that it's stimulating the creative thought process. And once you awaken that creative part of you, you'll be amazed at the opportunities that were always there, ones you never saw before. It's all a matter of how you look at life and opportunities. The 5th method of creatively staying on the self-enterprising track is to access the information highway. With your computer, either your home computer or the one you've got at work, you can go online with hundreds of services. You can access stock quotes. You can access worldwide newspapers. Develop an entirely new network. By taking advantage of the electronic age, you can learn more than you could otherwise learn. Meet people that you'd otherwise never meet. You can find information that your library may not have. You can share information and transfer files that you've never before been able to share. The 6th technique for staying on track: commit yourself to learning. Feed your mind, sharpen your interest in 2 major subjects, life and people. Learn how you can better interact with others. Learn more on how to get the most from life. Learn all that you can so that you can become all that you can become. Learning is the beginning of a life worth living. Learning is the beginning of wealth. Learning is the beginning of happiness. Learning is the beginning of health. Learning is the beginning of spirituality and faith. Learning and searching is where the process of creating your own personal miracle begins. Learning is the beginning of self-enterprise. So there you have the 6 steps in creatively building your self-enterprise traits and ultimately building your ambition. Now here are some tips on the second component of self-enterprise: courage. Ambition requires courage. Ambition requires that you stand up for what's right and fight what's wrong. Ambition requires that you hold on to your values in pursuit of your success. Ambition requires that you fight off fear. Fear is one of those things, one of those emotions that can stop people dead in their tracks, foregoing success and achievement. Fear can stop people from taking all that life has to offer them. Fear can rear its ugly head in many ways. Remember the old saying, "You have nothing to fear but fear itself." You can be afraid of success. You can be afraid of failure. You can be afraid of looking ridiculous. You can be afraid of change, either positive or negative change. You can be afraid of the competition. You can be afraid of loss and destruction. We're not always born with courage. We're not always born with all the fears either. You ever hear of a baby that's afraid of the dark? Of course not. They grew in the dark for 9 months. They should be afraid of the light. But do you ever hear of a 3 or 4-year-old afraid of the dark? All the time. Where'd they learn that fear? Who taught them that the dark outside is any different than the dark inside? Where'd they learn that? Well, probably from their parents who decided they needed a night light on. The kids probably think that they should be afraid of the dark if their parents insist that a light be kept on. And what about other fears in life? Are they learned? Well, maybe. Maybe some of your fears are brought on by your own experiences, by what someone has told you, by what you've read in the papers. Now, some fears are valid, like walking alone in a bad part of town at 2 in the morning. If there isn't fear, there's probably a bit of ignorance. And that type of ignorance can easily be solved by either education or experience. Once you learn to avoid that situation, you won't need to live in fear of it. Fears, even the most basic ones, can totally destroy our ambitions. Fear can destroy fortunes. Fear can destroy relationships. Fear, if left unchecked, can destroy our lives. Fear is an enemy. Here are a few techniques to help build your courage. Number 1, put all remote possibilities out of your mind. Don't worry about things you have no control over. Don't spend your time thinking about all the bad things that might happen to you. Don't spend your time plotting and planning ways to make sure these things will never happen to you. Courageous people don't worry about the unlikely, things out of their control. They concentrate on what they can control. Number 2, face your fears before you start something. Imagine difficult situations before they occur. Make a list of the worst that could happen, and you'll probably see that it's not so bad after all. And if you've looked at the possibilities beforehand, you'll probably never be faced with the situation at all. Why? Because you've already thought about it. You've already thought it through. And by contemplating what might happen, you'll chart your course to make sure that it doesn't. So the first courage-building technique is to put the remote possibilities out of your mind. The second, to face fears beforehand. And the third technique to build your courage is to imagine the alternative. See in your mind the end result of giving into your fear. Really feel the cost of being ruled by fear. Then really feel the gain of following your ambition courageously. Weigh the two. See the difference. Once again, it's your choice. Be fueled by your fears or face your fears. It all depends on how you can live with yourself. When you plot out your course for success, you know that there'll be some touchy moments when fear may get the best of you. But remember, if you can see your future ahead of you, if you really want what you're going after in pursuit of what you'll become, if you really have ambition, then you know that true success comes from taking the enterprising route.